she's gonna, thank you again, Nora, for coming and being part, just to share some things about her 20-something handbook, if you gotten it. And I'll plug her other previous book, The Freshman Survival Guide. This is the revised. I knew I had the revised version too, Nora. So thanks for doing that. So she's going to chat us a little bit about how she came to this and some things. So I'll let Nora go ahead and tell us a little bit about her story.
Yeah. So, I have been in ministry almost all my life. I started when I was in college myself, and did youth ministry and young adult ministry for 28 years. And then I worked for St. Mary's Press for 4 years. That was a big transition, going from, being with all the people all of the time to working remotely. So the Zoom universe is not strange to me at all. I worked, St. Mary's Press is in Winona, Minnesota, and I worked remotely. So all day, every day, I was, at my computer, video conferencing with my colleagues who were in Florida and New York City and Winona. So I did that for 4 years, and then, as is happening with a lot of the publishing industry, but the Catholic publishing industry in particular, there were layoffs, and so I got laid off. And this particular book had been rolling around in my head for a little bit, and I was like, well, now would be a really great time. So I had a little time on unemployment, and I wrote up the outline and pitched it to my agent. And and I say that all in one sentence, but that was like a 6-month process. So writing up a book proposal and getting it ready for the publisher is so much of the process in nonfiction writing. But and let me just open that door now. If anyone has questions about writing, Catholic publishing for the wider world, I'm happy to answer those questions either on this call or separately if you want to get in touch. Dave's got my contact info. But so I pitched this book. I got a Cracker Jack agent who did a great job getting it to the right publishers, and Harper Christian bought it. So it's published with an imprint called Nelson Books. It's a division of Harper Christian. And it came out in March. And so now I just get to talk about my book for the next year. But the idea behind the book was really, a lot of the stuff that we were talking about at St. Mary's Press, and certainly in my ministry work in the parishes before that, really lined up with Pope Francis's idea and a lot of the things that they ended up talking about in the Youth Synod about accompaniment with youth and young adults. And so what I wanted to do with this book was provide a resource that could accompany young people. I have had, as I'm sure you have, so many young people come up through my ministries that were deeply engaged in church and so connected to our community, and then were out there in the world and just could not find the right fit. Just couldn't find a ministry that they clicked with, didn't find a place that felt welcoming to them. As they experienced higher education and new doors opened in their own minds, that faith didn't always fit again. So I was in touch with those young people, like we all are, with the people who've become important to us and for whom we are important, and kind of a grounding person for them when they're in a time of transition or struggle or whatever. And so I would have these young adults checking back in with me, and the things that they were struggling with, some of them were the big life questions about purpose and path and things like that, and some of them were just the brokenness of the families that they had come from, or their own mental health issues. And some of it was just the mundane, just like, I've got a lousy landlord and I don't know what to do about it. And I don't want to call my mom because I don't want her to think I can't handle it, so all over the gamut, but one of the things that seemed to be sort of universal in all those calls was this sense that they had this idea that they were the only one who was struggling. and there was sort of a loneliness about that. Like I'm the, like, why does everybody else know how to do this and I don't know how to do this? And so that was one of the other things I wanted to do with the book was sort of dispel that myth. And between talking to my own, former youth group kids and young adults I administered with, and then a survey we were able to do before the book, I just got all this really great input and advice from other young adults. So that's interspersed throughout the book. So there's all these young adult voices that kind of, just repeat that message of like, you are not the only one, that these struggles are universal, and whatever you're struggling with, don't be afraid to ask for help, because everybody has gaps in their knowledge. Everybody has stuff that they, maybe should have learned, but they didn't. Either they learned it and forgot, or they just missed that lesson somewhere along the way. So that, in the book, there's all that. There's like how to set up your kitchen, but there's also how to seek forgiveness. There's how to make new friends and how to deal with grief. There's stuff on addiction and mental illnesses, and there's stuff on, how to get your roommates to clean up after themselves, or how to learn how to clean yourself if that's something that you've never been good at, So very much like the Freshman Survival Guide, it's that combination of the practical and also, kind of the bigger questions and struggles of life. But the other thing that I did with this book is I call it faith friendly, but not faith focused. So it's designed, and there's a faith-based discussion guide, and I'll take you through some of the free resources that are on the website a little bit later. But it's designed so that you could really use it in a public school setting. You could use it in an ecumenical conversation with young adults. You could use it even in an interfaith setting. Everything that I've written in there, I have about 10 years experience doing interfaith work as well. And so when I was writing the discussion guides and writing the book, I really kept that, kind of in my mind as I was writing, and really hopeful that this might be, that young adult ministry even is something that we might be able to do in an interfaith way. And
Nora, if I can interrupt just a second,
yeah.
Being at Union College, I'm part of interfaith staff. Like there's an Office of Religious Spiritual Life, and I've shared this with them, and we're going to talk about. We have a call tomorrow, and I'm going to talk more about it and share your talk with them there. So, and it's funny because I sent your interview to the director of our intercultural office, and she really enjoyed that. So thank you for that.
Nice.
Because when you mentioned that, I said, "Oh, this would be perfect for what we're talking about." So appreciate it. Yes, thanks.
Yeah, and I was so excited. So I did an interview last week with Catholic Faith Network, which is the TV station of the Archdiocese in New York, and I was so glad that the co-host asked me about interfaith, and I was like, "Thank you, God." So I had like 3 whole minutes to talk, on TV about interfaith and why it's important and stuff. But that's the other thing that I was so excited about being able to do with the book, is to be able to invite people into an interfaith dialogue, with young adults. I think it's a huge, not only is it a huge need, but I think it's a growing interest for young adults. They want to know people who are different than them. They want to engage in that dialogue. And so this is kind of the stuff of their everyday lives, but that faith-based discussion guide is designed to invite people into that kind of sharing, like what in your tradition, talks about hospitality, and are there scriptures or teachings from your own tradition. And I wrote those questions not in a Christian way, but in an interfaith dialogue way. So hopefully that will start to happen too. And I'm always happy to talk about that, Dave. So if they want me to pop in on, with your staff or something, that would be a dream. So let me stop there and see if anybody has any questions so far. And then what I'm going to do next is just take you on a little tour of the website, because there's some free resources there that you could use with or without the book. So I'd love to go over those with you.
Any questions? I know, Nora, what were your, just from me, myself, what do you think are the top, I mean, there's, what do you have?
There's 17
I was gonna
chapters.
say 17 chapters, and I said, like I said, you covered a lot of different topics. It's like, well, what are the like maybe the three most helpful things that you think might be in there out of all of those things?
Yeah, so
At least three, maybe, I don't know, whatever you think.
yeah, when I wrote the book, I started the way that I had it structured. I had started with the friendship chapter. And that was something. I mean, this is, Gen Z, they talk about them as the loneliest generation, which is just such a sad way to describe a generation. And some of that I think is developmental. It's that transition phase of life, but I also think that there are lots of important sociological reasons that Gen Z, and it's not just social media, but there's lots of sociological reasons why Gen Z is a lonely generation. But so when I wrote when I pitched the book, the friendship chapter was the first chapter, because to me that was like one of the most important issues that I was seeing. It was coming up again and again. And a lot of the other problems that young adults were experiencing could be maybe not solved, but certainly helped by stronger friendships in that early post-college stage or early 20s stage. A very bright young editor at the publisher, once we sold the book, proposed a new structure, and so now which I really loved, but her suggestion was that we open the book with the making a new city your new home, helping yourself feel at home in a new city, and that a lot of that was about like who's shopping for this book and what's their most pressing need and that kind of stuff. And so there's lots of good reasons for that to be the opening chapter. So I would, to answer your question in a roundabout story.
I know that's a lot.
Because I'm a youth minister and I tell stories. But I think I would say friendship is one of the primary issues for this age group. Finding friends, being able to maintain those friendships because this is a time of such tremendous change. Think of a handful of the 20-somethings that especially in those early 20s. Some of them are single parents, some of them are single, some of them are married. I mean, anybody who's done young adult ministry knows this list, but as getting back in the shoes of somebody who's 21 or 22, your crew is all of a sudden maybe scattered across the country, right, and certainly scattered across a whole different set of demographics. Right, and so trying to maintain the friendships that you've had, and then if you add, I've relocated to a new city to that, and then I'm trying to make new friends at the same time. That's a big deal. And also coming out of situations, a lot of them, not everybody, but where they've been in institutions that have surrounded themselves, that have surrounded them with people who are like them, people who are all students and we're all together and we already have so much in common. Mm-hmm. Now they're out in the world, you get the idea. So friendship is a big one. To me, the mental health chapter was really, really important. In my immediate family and in my extended family, mental health issues are a big deal. And so I really wanted to make sure that we talked about that and just in really open, honest ways, and invite people to do the same, to be able to start dealing with mental health. And I do think that this is a generation, they get labeled as, too delicate or, snowflakes or whatever people want to call them, as fragile. But I think part of the generational divide there is that they are more comfortable talking about those things. And, my generation gets all freaked out when people start talking about their mental health.
Believe me, my college students are talking about it all the time now. It seems like this past year, that's all I keep getting.
And I think that's great.
But they're aware. They're aware now. They're more of an aware of their conditions, or it may not be anything really necessary, but just taking care of themselves.
Yeah, yeah. And so I think some of what older generations perceive as fragility is just a willingness to be open about things that previous generations have been very close about. So yeah, so that's kind of a long answer to your question, Dave, but
that's okay.
but you know, those are some of the big ones for me. And then you know, I think some of those other things that we have in there about you know, there's a chapter on forgiveness, there's a chapter on grieving. And I think those are some things that you know, if you didn't grow up in a family that was good at saying I'm sorry and saying I forgive you, you know, it's huge. Learning to be vulnerable enough to say I messed up in a relationship, at work, you know, whatever. If you'd never learned that skill, life is going to be a lot harder, you know.
Yeah.
And so some of those things that I've just seen in the young adults that I've dealt with. But again, those quotes that came in on the surveys and people who responded to me on social media, just the way that those young adults would pour out their hearts about, you know, ways in which they had screwed up themselves or struggles that they had been through. I was able to just, you know, pull so many treasures out of those responses that ended up in the book. And I think that those things will be really, really helpful with that idea of accompaniment, of companioning young adults through this stage of their lives.
Cool. Thanks. Anybody else have anything, question or something for Nora?
Just a comment. I really appreciate the fact that it's got ecumenical and, you know, interfaith dimensions to it, because that's the world they live in, you know, I mean, and so they're rubbing shoulders with all kinds of folks from different faith traditions or no faith traditions. And so and the statistics, at least that I last knew, like something like a third of all Catholic marriages in the United States are ecumenical marriages. So they're with a Christian from another, you know, and so I think it's good that there can be that kind of hopefully sharing or common experience or whatever.
Yeah.
With it. So that's great.
Thanks, Dave. And I do think, you know, we bury our heads in the sand when we think that we can just stay in our Catholic bubble and not have to deal with anybody else. I mean, we're big, right? So we haven't felt the impact of the decline in religiosity and in religious affiliation that some of the other denominations have felt, but it's coming. You know, that's the sociological trend, and there's, you know, we're all doing the work to you know, keep
trying to maintain it.
Yeah, to keep people connected and stuff. But I think that we do ourselves and our young people a disservice when we don't prepare them for that pluralistic world, because that's the world, as you said, that's the world that they're going to be living in. And when we say, you know, you have to live in your Catholic bubble, that's not the choice that young people are making, clearly. So, you know, and I will also add about my own interfaith experience. You know, I when I first started doing interfaith work with young people and bringing them to interfaith events, a lot of parents, I shouldn't say a lot, a handful of parents were concerned. I always do that, and I think a lot of us do, is take one complaint and turn it into everybody's saying. It's like, no, a couple of people are saying. But so there was concern that kids would get converted, or kids would, you know, it would water down their faith, right?
Confuse them. I've heard that too.
Yeah, so it can confuse them.
Well, what if they want? Yeah, that looks more appealing. It's like, well, maybe it does. Who knows? That's the point.
Maybe we have some work to do, right?
Yeah, right.
But my own experience is that once kids engage in that dialogue, they see other young people from other faith traditions who can speak about their faith really intelligently and in meaningful ways, and it ups the ante for them. You know, they want to be able to do that too. So it, you know, it actually has the opposite result, where young people start diving deeper into their own faith, so they can engage in those conversations with more intelligence and experience. And so, it's been so great for me, personally and spiritually, definitely as a minister, but then the young people who have come up through those interfaith programs, and been a part of them, it's just life-changing for them. And really, it also I think helps them love their church more, because they see that nobody else is perfect either, that everybody has struggles like we have struggles. So but yeah, thanks for that, David. Good point.
Any other folks have anything, question or comments about it if you haven't seen it yet, the book?
If it's okay, I'd love to take you on a little
Yeah, show us
tour
your
of the
resource
website.
there. You
Can
have
I
a discussion guide. Yeah,
share? Yeah, let me screen share.
you should be able to, I think. Yes.
Here. So you guys kind of went away from me. Well, that's okay. So is the screen you're seeing, did I share the right screen? Does it say the 20-something handbook in big red letters?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh yeah, you can't see everyone. I'm sorry if you.
Well, you just sometimes Zoom does
Yeah, no.
automatically. I don't
share. You
expect
can't see everyone.
Yeah, you're along one side, but that's okay. I
Okay.
just wanted to make sure I wasn't showing you this random document that's up on my other screen. So this is the website for the book, and you can order the book here too. There's also a link for it. Let me just scroll down once and not scroll while I'm talking. Okay.
I had put
I don't want to make you dizzy.
Nora, I had shared this onto my Facebook page too to make sure, but I'll send it out the links to my
Oh,
post.
thanks.
So
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah. Oh no, believe me. When you first sent it to me, I checked it all out. I downloaded the book and everything.
Right. Yeah, so you can get a free chapter here. I don't know if that part shows up on your screen, but and take a look at that. But on the website here, so this is just a description of the book that I'm showing you right now, but in a minute I'll take you down. There's a link for bulk buys. So some folks are buying them for their college graduates. A lot of people did freshman survival guide for high school graduates, and 20-something could definitely work for high school graduates if that's something you wanted to do with that. It's aimed a little bit higher, but your young people, there are definitely people who are ready for this book. Or if you are, if you've got people going in different directions, not everybody's headed for college, and the freshman survival guide isn't the right fit for everybody. This is a nice alternative, or for the kids who aren't going to college or not right now. That's also a nice way to do that. To have a stack of them around for when you encounter a young person who's struggling with one of the things in the book, and just peel it off the pile and give an opportunity for conversation around some of these issues. I'm going to scroll again down. This was our pre-order offer from the publisher. God bless them. They've done such a nice job. It's like an author's dream, the way that Nelson Books has promoted this. Yeah, it's really.
It's audio books too. I didn't notice that. Oh,
yeah. So it's out.
Did you get to read it, or did you get to do it, or did someone else?
They hired this wonderful audiobook voice actor to do it, and she's so good.
Cool.
I tried to do an audition recording, and first of all, I've talked long enough, so I know that I've got that Western New York flat A, where you can say whole words without ever opening your mouth. It just all comes out through your nose. I've got the flat A, but also just learning to read aloud. Like I used to preach regularly and stuff. I'm confident about that. But then as I was recording myself,
for the book.
Like, oh no, thank you. So I was really glad to have somebody else do that. Yeah. I think you can still, if you do this pre-order, you can get your you can download 3 chapters for free right away if you come back and do that offer. I think that still works. But I want to scroll down a little bit. So this Church Source one is if you want to buy the book in bulk, you can get
through them.
a hefty discount. I forget what the percentage is, but it's quite a bit less expensive.
Oh, that's where those are. Oh, those little quotes. That's why I was looking at those. I know you.
Yeah, and so these are ways to
I saw
share
you
stuff
sharing those before, so I gotta. All right. Cool.
yeah. And those are just, you know, some of them are quotes from me, but several of them are quotes from the young people that we
From the book,
we
yeah.
quoted in the book. And then that's Bob McCarty said some nice things about the book, and several other people. Thank you, Bob, for the endorsement.
Yeah.
But this is the part that I really wanted to walk you through. Let me check our time. Okay, do you have agenda stuff to cover after me, Dave?
No,
I want to.
just as long as we're done before 2:30, because they're having a fire alarm test at 2:30 here in the building.
I
So
promise I won't talk that
hear
long.
alarms and stuff going. That's what I said to David before. I was like, oh, hopefully, yeah, but that's fine.
Yeah, definitely.
Unless anybody else needs to, they can go if they need to.
Yeah. I just wanted to walk through people through what's here, because there's 5 or 6 resources that we created.
Downloaded the guide. It's pretty good. I like that whole idea of the guide. Yeah.
So there's a discussion guide that's for non-faith-based settings. So if your library is looking for programming for young adults, this would be great. You know, they can do that without bringing the faith content into it. But the 20-something handbook faith-based discussion guide, which I realize is a kind of a cumbersome name for the document, but what that does is it takes those questions from the secular guide, but then adds in those faith questions, and invites people to bring their faith to whatever topic it is. And so, you know, even in the chapter on kitchens and cooking, you know, there are conversations that invite people to talk about how food is important and what kinds of foods are important in their faith tradition. So in very practical, you know, kind of day-to-day ways, we bring in faith and interfaith there to those day-to-day things. But then obviously in those more, you know, heart and soul chapters, those faith-based questions are going to be even more important there. The pastor's step-by-step it's just a big long list of all different ways that you could use the book or use those discussion guides in your ministry settings. I wrote that actually. My publisher has a newsletter that goes out to pastors of all different denominations, which is why it's called the Pastor's Step by Step. If it was just written for Catholics, I would say that this is the young adult ministries, you know, step-by-step guide, or the youth minister step-by-step guide, or faith formation step-by-step guide, because it's, you know, you're the people who are doing that work in the Catholic setting. But that's a long list of ideas on how to do that. And there's also, you know, there's some ideas on there that you could definitely just steal for young adult ministry, you know, even if you never use the book. So invite you to take a look at that. If you are connected in any way to campus ministry, this next handout on how to use the book and the discussion guides on campus, you know, there's a lot of content in the book that really invites collaboration. And so, you know, I think of the chapter on mental health, and, you know, if campus ministry could partner up with the on-campus counseling center or the psychology department, you know, there's lots of different opportunities as you look at the content of the book. I just did a presentation yesterday for Nazareth College for their alumni. So I did a presentation to graduating seniors and new alumni on 3 chapters of the book that they chose. It was called Leaving the Nest and Building Your Own. And it was the chapter on, making a new city feel like home, a chapter on adulting at your parents' house. So how do you, live with your parents, which 52% of young adults do. The majority of young adults are living with one or both of their parents. So adulting at your parents, and the other chapter that they wanted to draw from was the one on roommates and apartment keeping. And so we had a lunch hour program on that. And that was a lot of fun, and everybody stayed till the end, which the hosts were really excited about, and so was I. They're like, yeah, usually people bail halfway through, so we're glad that
were they a lot of like new alum? Is that what they were, new alums?
Yeah. So it was some folks, probably like about half and half, that half the group were people about to graduate, and the other half were, are people who graduated in the last few years.
Oh, cool. That's a good idea.
So,
I'll keep that in mind. I might do something with my.
yeah, I would love that. And then the last free resource here is just it's a 1-page that you can print and copy, and it's just kind of like a mini guide. It's just some of the content from the book boiled down, and so all of that stuff is there, free to use. I hope that you find it helpful. And you can certainly offer that to other people too. Again, with the discussion guides, they're specific to the book, but they're also the kind of resource that if somebody didn't have the book, or somebody's new to the group, that they could still participate in that discussion really easily. So let me stop sharing, because I know I unconsciously scroll doing that, and I've had that experience with other facilitators when they're mindlessly scrolling and you're getting.
No, that's fine. Thanks. No, but thanks for sharing. And I'll reshare that too, Nora. I'll send out the link. I send out the links and stuff to folks so they get it all directly. But I know I already downloaded it and I was looking through it. So
good. And one other resource I wanted to mention, and I feel like it really specifically connects to the things that motivated me to write the book. St. Mary's Press has started a new research arm called Springtide. You might have seen some of their stuff. And that's about young people and disaffiliation. And one of the things that Josh Packard really emphasizes is, we look at these numbers around disaffiliation and think, oh, people have are disavowing religion and spirituality, and it's not that tidy, it's not that neat, that there are young people who maybe don't identify as Catholic, or aren't attending, but still have that, kind of that hook in their heart. They're still connected to the other members of their youth group or their youth minister. They're, young adults who had a really important campus ministry experience while they were in college, but again, have not found that spiritual home. And so while we're seeing these numbers about disaffiliation, we really shouldn't, number one, give up hope, but number two, abandon our sense of commitment to those young adults. And for me, that's a big part of what writing this book was. It was a way to continue to walk side by side with young people who were not necessarily coming into the doors of our churches. And again, as Catholics, it's so easy to sit back and say, y'all come, because that's who we are. We're big and everybody comes, and but
right. We want everyone to come to us. And again, I try to encourage people, we got to go out. If we don't go out, they can't come back.
Yeah, and we got to be out there with them, and for me, the book was
to me, that's the fun part. I think that's, for me, that's what I get the fun out of it. It's being out among, going out with folks, and adults. That's why I like being on the campus, even though I'm probably older than most of their parents, but I still like being interactive.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that's always been one of the great gifts of youth and young adult ministry is to, it's just a different part of the world that when I'm not in the thick of that, I feel like I'm missing stuff,
I've
so,
missed it the past year or so I know.
yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
any questions from anybody else? I mean, I know anybody.
Could I ask a question of the group?
Go ahead.
We
Sure.
could just go around. I'm just, as you think of one or two young adults that what have they been struggling with? What are they, kind of the question that Dave asked of me, what are the important things to me in the book, the most important topics, but what are you seeing in the young adults as the things that they're concerned about and is front of mind for them? And I asked that question as an extrovert, and I apologize. Like, here, let me give you something heavy and ask you to answer immediately. So whoever's the most extroverted of the group will make you answer first.
It'll probably be me. Because I start talking right away.
We'll give the introverts a minute to think, right, Elizabeth? Okay.
Well, no, when you said that, I immediately went to 4 different young adults that I know of. One, he's the oldest of 3 sons, and he's in the military. He doesn't live close by, but I did see him this weekend at Mass with his mother and youngest brother. And I think for him, just having something like that to connect, because he does live away, would be helpful. He comes from a very strong family background, but just having something like that, I think, is always something nice to have for him. And then I think of 2 others who, if they went to college, they went to 2 years. But actually, they're siblings. All 3 of them have children, and in fact, I think they all have daughters. Well, anyway, but it's, I think for them, this would be something helpful and just relating, because when they were teens, they were always here at Mass.
Yeah.
And then as life hit them and they left high school and left home, it isn't always just being, but letting them know that it's okay, that they're still connected and having something like that. So I know 4, and 3 of them are siblings, and there's probably a few others if I really sat down and thought about it. Now I gave Laura and Carrie enough time to think.
Yeah, and I think too, Elizabeth, what you said, that they were here all the time. I mean, that's the other thing that I think about with my own young adults is, when they were engaged in youth ministry and young adult ministry, it was a huge part of their lives, and my, people live off those experiences for years and sometimes decades later. They still have this little flame in their heart for that community that they were a part of. And once you've got that space, it, like, you spend the rest of your life looking for that experience again, right? I mean, I've met people in parishes where, the people that are really engaged in parish life, I always like to scratch the surface with them a little bit to find out where was their strong ministry experience, because they've almost always had one. It was a camp, or it was a campus ministry, or it was a youth group, and they'll survive on just like meager rations, with the Catholic Church, or a pale comparison to this really vibrant experience that they've had before in their lives. And I just feel like, gosh, if we could serve that up for them again, or if we could invite them into creating that again, what kind
I would have devoured your book when I was stepping out of, because I went to an all-women's Catholic college, and it was small, and we did everything, and we were so connected with the sisters, and everything flowed in and out of it. And we had,
that's what I'm talking about.
One minister that came over from the Capuchins, and he just said Mass for us in what was called Sofa City. And I mean, we just sat on these modern type sofas from the 70s and the leftovers when we were there. But anyway, I would have devoured your book, because as soon as I stepped into regular parish life, it's like that was what I was craving for.
Yeah.
It wasn't anything. There
Yeah.
wasn't anything, even though I was teaching in the Catholic school, which was right across from where my college was that closed, but because there wasn't anything for us to connect into. And I've always said that. And then all of a sudden it got to a point, and I'm working in the Albany diocese, and what did they come up with? Young adult ministry, but I was too old for that.
No, you're not too old.
No.
The story of my life.
I always kid people. They always tell me, "Oh, maybe you're too old for that." I said, "Never too old. That keeps me young." I tell you, believe me.
No, really, the cut of
Believe
the
me,
face, and I was like, I
some
can't
of the
believe
best people in ministry with teens and young adults are the older folks, because I think sharing experiences. It's not. I mean, nothing against having a younger person in there, but they always wanted to hire a younger person. But sometimes,
One of my best youth ministry volunteers ever was an English guy who was in his 80s.
oh yeah, I agree. I had a
He
pair.
was,
Yeah.
just so odd, but the kids adored, and he loved the kids, and they knew it. So it was, did anybody else have thoughts on the young
Karen?
adults and what their needs are?
Or just,
From the conversations, oh, sorry, Dave.
don't go ahead. That's what I was just saying.
From the conversations I've been having so far, most people are really struggling with friendships and the mental health portion. So those were the two pieces that you picked right up on as were your most important. That's what I've been hearing, from the families and from the kids. And I've had limited interaction with the older young people so far. Yeah. But I mean, as you were talking, I don't fit into the 20-something section anymore, but I was like, there's probably a lot of that in there that I still need.
There's really no, I said the same thing, Carrie. I said, I've learned it. I just moved this past week, and half the stuff in here is related to what I was just going through. How to change an address. I didn't know how to change an address. I never had to change my
You can do it online. I didn't know that before. I read the book.
Everything's done online now with you, but yeah, your little
USPS,
practical things, but then those other life stuff, that's great.
And even when you were, I've got two younger kids at home, a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old, and you were talking about like if people were being taught forgiveness and grieving, I was like, maybe I need to read this to make sure that like I'm doing this right. So before they hit 20-something.
Well,
don't wait. Don't wait.
That is looking back to be like, well, what, I mean, I have my oldest daughter just turned 30, and so we've and my youngest is 21, so I have 4 kids, and to so they've all moved through that phase. Well, one of them still in it, of like critiquing our parenting, and like now we get to have those conversations about what we didn't teach them and ought to have, and thankfully some of the things of like, I'm really glad you did this or that, mom and dad, so those are always beautiful moments, when your kids told you that there were things you did
when
right.
They thank you for something that they thought was yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's definitely stuff that we missed, but a lot, my kids grew up in the church and surrounded by youth groups and stuff, and that while it's hard to have a mom in ministry, it just is, there's no two ways about that. They also had youth groups full of big brothers and big sisters that they knew loved them like crazy, and that's something that like, I mean, who gets that, right? Who gets to have that? And that has been, one of the great gifts of my life of ministry, is to have my own children grow up with this whole extended family of church young people that are just, they're engaged in their faith and they're engaged in the world, and and really, really inspiring and encouraging for my own kids. But yeah, that perspective of like, am I getting it right? It's nice to think to look ahead and think about some of those things. So.
Well, they always say there's no manual to parenthood, right? I mean, they don't give you a book that says, here, do this when you're.
Yeah. There's lots of people with lots of opinions, but you're the expert in your own kid, and that's the other thing.
Laura, do you have anything? I heard you.
Yeah, that's kind of the perfect segue into what I was thinking, because I'm intergenerational. So I'm thinking,
you do a lot of yeah.
We focus on the kids and the youth and through confirmation, and we're really not teaching them how to transition into adulthood. So maybe that also has to go with the parents of, starting 6th, 7th, 8th grade, whatever you want to do in that age, is how do you prepare them for their faith life after, not just confirmation to get it done, check it off and be done with it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it does affect the young adults, but maybe we need to help the parents realize this is something they need to start working on and buy
before
the
they
book.
get to that age, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't wait till they're 25 and go, why aren't they going to church?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
That's what happens. Yeah.
And I am hoping that some like parenting groups and parents of young adults might engage with the book too, and I'll be interested, as it's out there to get. I've gotten a few reviews and that have some good information about what why I have young adults myself, and this is kind of how the book hit
I
me.
think that would be good to use, like when you're doing your Circle of Grace nights with those age groups starting middle school, then maybe we do something with the parents on that.
There you go, Laura. We can pull out the discussion guide and just start talking about before they get to be 20-something.
Let's talk about that.
Well, and I think what I was going to add to the conversation is that I think some of the things that 20-somethings may experience are also getting younger. I think, there's juniors and seniors in high school that are experiencing a lot of these same challenges, maybe not to the same degree, or, they're moving out of the house or that kind of thing, but
They're thinking about it though, I'm sure.
well, they're thinking about it. And, I think my cousin's son is a senior in high school, and he's a brilliant kid. He's brilliant. And, he wants to go to Princeton. Now, I don't know if that's going to really happen or not, because, it's tough place to get into. But still, and I remember he was going through this phase not too very long ago where, he was quote unquote dating someone, and, it wasn't someone that, a family that, as my cousin put it, has quite the same values as they did. And the funny thing is that the young people at church went to the youth minister and said, we're really concerned about him, and blah 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 blah, and this girl is not right for him, and and that kind of thing, and it was mostly girls that were going to her telling her.
They're watching these reality shows, and unfortunately that's where they're they see all these dating shows and reality
shows. It was really
real life, real
stage their own intervention.
Yeah, so it was really but what you're saying is so true, is that there was at least this safe space where they felt comfortable going to her and saying, what can we do? And
how can we support our friend?
Yeah, exactly. And, luckily that it didn't last. But I just think it's valuable, like you're saying, to start having, being aware of these kinds of things, because it's some of that is happening, now or will be soon, so I think it's
and there's a chapter, I called it habits, it's on good and bad habits, but it's really about addiction. That's what the chapter is really about, addiction, and it's an easier way into the topic to talk about our habits, but that idea of who do we spend our time with, and what are we flirting with, literally and figuratively, and and so much of that is about peers, a little bit less so for young adults, but not that much less than adolescents. And I think, looking at the opioid epidemic, that we haven't been talking about it much this year because of the pandemic, because the pandemic just is like all the news all the time. But opioid addiction is
Oh, wow.
huge. It's a bigger problem than ever. I wish I remembered the statistic, but just a couple of days ago, I was looking at, and there's been a huge leap in opioid deaths and suicidality. So, while we've been distracted with COVID, our young people have been having this, extreme experience continuing. And that, I remember when I was talking to the different publishers about the book, and one of the editors asked me, like, what's something that I wouldn't have encountered as a young adult that the young adults, Nora, are encountering. And I was like, I don't know any young adult who doesn't know someone personally who has died from opioid overdose.
Yeah.
And he was like, wow, like I hadn't thought about that, but like everybody knows at least someone. And a lot of young people have had the experience of losing somebody very close to them from opioid addiction. So, that's, and that, that stuff, maybe it happened when they were 17 or 18, or maybe it happened when they were in college. And we all know from losing people that is grief that hangs, it stays with you. I remember the people that I lost when I was young, peers and friends, and like that will always be a hole in my heart. Those early losses are
especially if they're so young. Yeah, when it's at a young age, usually that always impacts.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It hits different. It hits different when it's a young person and when you're a young person. Yeah.
No,
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead, Laura. Go ahead.
Trying to phrase this the right way.
You know us, Laura. Go ahead. There's no, don't worry about right or wrong.
No, trying to phrase this the right way. For young people, is there any, or young adults, the same polarization that happens in the news and everything else is also happening in the church? Do they notice any of that, or is that anything that anybody has commented on, like just different people speaking out on behalf of the church that aren't always doing that?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and you phrased it really nicely.
Laura.
I'll see if I can be as
polarization. I like that word.
Careful in my response as you were in your question.
I'll edit it out if we have to. No.
That's okay with me, Dave. Keep me safe, right?
Fine.
I mean, I definitely, I'm a progressive Christian. I identify that way, and I'm a feminist, and so I'm coming at this group of young adults from that perspective. I also have had gay and lesbian young people in my youth groups. I've had young people who have transitioned. So all of those things that we're in the thick of right now in the church that are so, just such third rail issues, that are so difficult to talk about. Yes, young people have noticed. For a lot of them, it's the reason they have disengaged. If you look at some of the both the Pew research and the Springtide research, issues, one, hypocrisy is a big deal for young people.
Correct.
So all of these issues around sex and sexuality that the church, some in the church have spoken of, with not a lot of love in their voices. At the same time, we're going through this huge crisis about sexual abuse in the priesthood. I mean, that just doesn't wash with the young people I'm encountering. They're just like, yeah, no thanks. You can't say anything to me, which is too bad, because, I definitely believe in the richness of our tradition. And, there's so much that we have to offer young people, especially around social justice, around interfaith work. There's just, not to mention, Jesus and the Gospels, I really love that.
If I could comment, it's funny because on the retreat I just did Sunday, one of the young ladies said to me, she goes, we were talking about I was being involved and participating, and she goes, I have a question. It's like, how can we as women in church still participate? And she had and I said, I agree with you. And that's like one of those things I said, well, don't make that the reason to leave the church, because a lot of people take that as a reason to leave.
Yeah.
I said, if you stay in, at least you got to participate and try to help change things, right? You can't just take off, because that's what a lot of people are doing, is finding an issue that they don't agree with and then just saying goodbye. That's what a lot of young adults or young people are saying. I don't agree with this, so then I'm just not going to participate.
And some people absolutely, for their own health and safety, have to leave.
Oh,
I
right.
get that.
I agree. But I said to her, I said, don't let that be the only reason, or
Yeah.
don't make that a reason to
I always
not
say,
participate.
if you can stay, please do. We need you.
Yeah, I told her, I said that, I said, if you leave, then who's going to try? I mean, how can we change?
Who's going to change it?
So,
Yeah, right.
So I agree, Laura, that's a great question.
That's so true. And the other thing, Laura, is that yes, that polarization is there, but one of the things that I try to talk about is, is that Catholicism is a really big tent. We've got the Catholic anarchists and the Catholic workers, and just such a rich tradition and history of activism in the Catholic Church, and and the
Nuns
religious
on the bus, and all the nuns, all the sisters that are doing.
yeah. But the religious left, I mean, there's just such a beautiful history there, and the fact of the matter is the religious right. They're the ones who, in a lot of places and for a lot of ministries, they're sitting in the pews, they're keeping our churches running. And so, there's a lot that doesn't fit there for me, but there's also something to be grateful for over on that side. I am deeply concerned about the polarization in our church, and I think it has reached toxic levels, and a level where it has very little to do, in some places, in some corners, very little to do with religion anymore, and has gotten to be about money and politics. And maybe it always was, and I was just naive about it. I don't know, but that seems to be the case now, and so I'm definitely, the things that I hear about some parts of the church, I'm like, ooh, that could go very badly. That could go really, in a not good direction. But I love Pope Francis, and he speaks in young adult sound bites. God bless him. Thank God for Pope Francis. In just the ways that he can say in just a few sentences a word of comfort and offer people that invitation to stay connected. Maybe not come in the doors of the church, but to stay connected. Like,
right.
Pope Francis is okay. Maybe I can still see myself.
Yeah, it reminds. He says, don't worry about sometimes those little things that everyone's picking at, right? It's those things that have no real purpose or anything.
Yeah, he calls us back to the heart.
What do we do? Like you said about Jesus, and the gospel. It's not about who does this or who does that or who says, right? So.
Yeah, and there are very few young people that you'll encounter that are anti-Jesus. No,
I always say
Jesus as a teacher and a healer.
Jesus is very anti establishment type of thing. So I mean, that's where we need to go. So,
is that I was probably more I wasn't as as careful in my answer as you were in your question, but I hope I answered it. Is about us, and this is one thing that I really try to do with my social media is to lift up those social justice stories and show when a cardinal or a bishop goes to the border to say mass, or when someone is meeting with the LGBTQ young adults in their diocese. Those are stories that I try to raise up to say the church is more diverse than what you get to see in the media, that it's more diverse than the headlines would show.
Because those are the things that I think some of the older high school and some of the, like, I know my college students have we already got in a conversation about when you talked about the blessing of same-sex marriages. It's like they all emailed me, and I got a call from our cultural officer at the college. Can we do something about it? So I was like, oh, now we got to talk about what the Catholic stance is and all these different things. So,
and there are people who will tell you that's political, but it's pastoral.
It is.
It's
I shared Father James Martin's book, Building a Bridge and all those things, and trying to say, see, there are people who do want to be open to welcoming folks. So
I was gonna say, in my 30-something band that I'm in right now, because of these hot points, I've found myself in a social media position where I felt like I was defending my faith a lot. So I can only imagine
that's a
the
big
20-something band and the high school band. It's as passionate, if not more,
Right.
of that, because I know that was all over. I mean, I have trans friends, gay friends, and they were like, well, what's wrong with you now, Care? Like,
Yeah.
what's up with this? I thought you said everybody's welcome, and the reassuring, and it felt like a lot of weight on my shoulders. So I'm sure kids feel more.
Absolutely.
That's the questions I've been getting from young adults and some of the teens. Like at a retreat, they ask like that. Well, how can we believe one thing but personally feel another? That it's like you said, the hypocrisy, Nora, like Nora mentioned about hypocrisy. It's like, how do we do two things? I said, well, unfortunately, if it means something to you, that's unfortunate. We have to be able to do that. Or
well, and there is one of those places where I invite people to stay for that reason. Is there are people who just do not understand this, and they don't have the perspective that you have on it. So please stay and offer your
share it.
perspective.
Yeah, if you don't share it, then
it's vital to the
learn.
church. Yeah, that they, and one of the other things I in my interfaith stuff, it was a really great moment. I got invited to speak on a panel at a Latter-day Saints event. So we're at the Mormon chapel, and one of the young women in the audience, I think, knowing that I was Catholic and that we have some of the same struggles that the Mormon Church does,
They have talked about rules,
around
right?
women, around
Talk
gay
about
people,
rules with them,
yeah. So she asked me about, what do you do when you disagree with what your church teaches? And she had me pegged as a rebel from the start, I think. But I said, what I try to do is find the people who are ministering with those people, so that I can hear from a pastoral perspective. And I've told the parents of trans kids the same thing, that I'm hearing these things from the church about my child, and I just like, how can I stay? And that's where I point them to people like New Ways Ministries and Father Jim Martin, and say, have the conversation with this part of the church, at least to start with, because that part of the church that you're hearing from now is causing you harm. So, and that's not God's desire for us, right? Is to be harmed. So, have the conversation with people who are taking a pastoral approach to this issue, so you can receive pastoral care first. And then once you're strengthened, then maybe,
then fight the fight.
engage with those other parts of the church and move into advocacy. But especially in those initial delicate stages, as people are coming to terms with their identity, or the identity of a family member, that maybe wasn't what they anticipated, that pastoral care is really the first thing that they need. So I'm aware of our time, and that I promised that I wouldn't talk till 2:30.
Thanks so much. Again, anybody at last minute, any other questions? Lord, Nora, just thank you again for taking the time, and for Carrie, Laura, and Elizabeth for joining us.